you guys want a shot at winning a copy of Call of Duty World War II for the console of your choice for absolutely free, a couple of my friends and I are doing a little giveaway. Link is down there in the description below. Go check it out if you're interested. Call of Duty World War II is just a few days away. We are just above that 1 week mark here. Coming Friday, we will be at that 7-day, 1 week mark, in which that, I think, is when time starts to drag the longest. I said it before and I'll say it again. I think when we get this close to something that we've hyped up for so long, time just seems to go at like half speed. While, of course, that doesn't actually happen, the anticipation is slowly killing us, but nonetheless, we're very, very close. And honestly, this is totally unrelated to the topic, but there are retail copies going out to different retailers and everything that people are getting early, so we're gonna see a lot of content coming out here in the next couple of days. And while it is all leaked stuff, and it's something you can totally avoid if you want to stay off of different socials like Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, YouTube, stuff like that, or you just want to be selective with it, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out here in the next couple of days that'll give us even more reason to be hyped to get our hands on it and to play it for ourselves. But that's not what we're going to be talking about here in this one. Today I want to talk about something that I don't think that I've really done all that much, if at all, since any of the stuff we've made in COD World War II. I've been super optimistic about everything, and I don't mean for this to sound like a negative video, but I do want to talk a little bit about some of the concerns I have for COD World War II. Now, of course, again, I'm more so a more optimistic person, so these are kind of more so on the minor edge, perhaps, or more so generalistic, and stuff that, of course, you can feel free to add down there in the comment section down below, but it's some stuff that's crossed my mind that we don't have all that much information on, and of course, until the full launch of the game happens, we won't have much information on, so it's more so kind of a hopeful concern, something of which we may not have any control over, or there's not really any time to react to these sort of things at the launch, but nonetheless, it's things that I want to bring up that may or may not, in the long term, be some key stresses of Call of Duty World War II. So, of course, as I mentioned, if you guys have anything that you guys want to add to this, feel free to let me know down there in the comment section down below. It's all completely biased, completely personal, and of course, your concerns may not match up with mine may not match up with yours. You may have a lot more, you may have less, who knows? But nonetheless, your opinion is totally valid, and of course, welcomed down there in the comment section down below. But let's jump into some of my concerns here with this. My list itself, the core key features that I want to hit on, might not be all that much, but this does have the possibility of me rambling on into other segments of this, but nonetheless, number one here up on this is one that I'm sure all of you guys have on your list. We're just gonna come right out with it: supply drop content. Now, the nice thing, or I guess the silver lining with World War II and what we know of supply drops thus far, is that they came right out and said that there would be supply drops pretty much from the very beginning. This is the 4th year now that we've seen supply drops in Call of Duty, and since then, all 3 years previously, there really was no mention of it leading up into the launch, or it was something that was a vague, ambiguous statement that was intentional so that players didn't necessarily get turned off to the idea. But now, with it being that 4th year, of course, it is pretty much something that is guaranteed at this point no matter what. Going forward, Call of Duty is probably never going to be the same as that of what you remember in Black Ops 2, Modern Warfare 3, Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops, those sorts of games, the classics where it was just jump in, play for hours a day, grind it out, all that kind of stuff. Those were simpler times, and yeah, it might be something that's, looking back, is absolutely beautiful compared to what we have now. That doesn't really change the fact that at the core of it, the business of Activision is to drive sales and revenues, and supply drops, unfortunately, are the way that do that probably the best. But nonetheless, kind of circling back to the topic at hand of supply drop content, we know that we are going to get weapon variants in supply drops, and what is detailed at the launch window of being cosmetic only, that's something we don't know if that's going to change after the launch, in which we have variants of weapons that are stat changing, or if that's going to be something that is only tailored to a sort of prototype lab kind of thing that we saw comparable to Infinite Warfare's. But regardless, it starts to create that schism of concern once again, in which one way seems fine, definitely just cosmetic reskins, that's just cosmetic stuff, but if it changes in the fact that there are advantages behind a little bit of a paywall, that's where it starts to become not cool. And of course, I'm also really concerned with how this could be formatted, because with what we saw in the time progressing through the franchise, it seemed like things have gotten progressively better for the system and how the consumer is treated within that system. What I mean is that Advanced Warfare system and Black Ops 3 system had all of the supply drop content into one pool. Advanced Warfare's was actually probably better than that of what Black Ops 3's was, because a lot of it was more so cosmetic compared to what we had in Black Ops 3. We did have variants, yes, but in terms of just the sheer weight of a variant compared to an actual weapon, I think Black Ops 3 is a little bit heavier and a little bit worse off in those regards. But nonetheless, both were pretty bad in their own aspects. Black Ops 3 obviously had way more content into that pool, so your chances of getting whatever you wanted were much smaller than that of what was in Advanced Warfare. But move over into this past year with Infinite Warfare and Modern Warfare Remastered, it seems like that system got a little bit progressively better. Now granted, of course, the supply drop system still is not great in any regards, but of course, it was better than Black Ops 3, having that maybe 1 in 3,000 chance of getting whatever you wanted. Instead, variants were available via prototypes and crafting, and specific DLC weapons were available to Season Pass holders or via a challenge in-game. Modern Warfare Remastered, though they didn't have that sort of system entirely in play, what really worked out nicely, I think, was the collection system, in which there was a more confined pool of content that you could pull from. So instead of 1 in 1,000 chances, it'd probably be like 1 in 150 or 1 in 200. So your odds were obviously a lot better. And then, of course, the nice part also was that weapons themselves were not in Modern Warfare Remastered system supply drops. They were collection rewards, so that you had to chip away at different collections, and you could actually pick and choose what you wanted to unlock. So I'm hoping that the system in World War II is somewhat manageable in sort of those confines. Maybe a little bit of everything, maybe a little bit more of a refined version of some, whatever it may be. I'm just hoping the system itself does not end up bending players' backs to the point of Black Ops 3. And the next big thing that I really want to talk about is weapon balance. Now this seems like, once again, a more general idea and something that should be addressed every single year, and while I do agree with that statement, World War II has an interesting task at hand, because a lot of you guys may have recognized, if you played the beta, whether that be on PC, Xbox One, or PS4, you might have noticed that there were some weapons that definitely stood out. And while this happens every single year, the majority of those weapons that stood out to players were from one classification. And you might think differently than me here on this one, but from what I saw, it was definitely the SMGs that were far more dominant than any other classification of weapon in Call of Duty World War II. And so that to me was my first indication that some weapon balancing probably might need to be made there. And of course, while I have absolutely no idea of the back-end workings, the attributes that go into every single weapon and balancing them equally, it is something where I feel like, just off the top of my head, that assumption that some things may need to be adjusted felt like a valid thought. Now, of course, pretty much in no scenario are we ever going to have a completely level playing field, and whenever you even were to, say, theoretically find that perfect sweet spot of every weapon balanced out so that it comes down to a sheer 1v1 player engagements, and whoever has the best gun skill ends up winning, while even if we could ever get to that, it's probably never going to be a perfect system, simply because we play online. There is latency issues, there are things that happen over network connections that are just out of our control. But when it comes down to it, the classification that really reigned supreme was the SMGs in World War II, so I'm hoping that either some of these things are dropped down so that the other weapons can maybe counter some of the playstyles the SMGs end up bringing to the table. One thing also that kind of ties into this is a little bit of the map design. What we saw in the World War II beta were 3 different multiplayer maps, 4 if we add in Aachen at the end, and all of which were rather small to medium-sized maps. We didn't see anything with really too many open fields, open lanes. A lot of it was really close quarters situations, so therefore the SMGs were definitely warranted. And that's something in which it was probably showcased those maps off for a specific reason, to make the maps look like they play incredibly fast. Because coming off of 3 years of advanced movement, the idea of going back to boots on the ground, the real only concern I think that I saw out of this was the pace. That was something in which that pace going from something so fast to something so slow was an issue of some people's concern, and therefore these maps were really great indicators as to, hey, this game can play fast. You don't necessarily need to think of it going down in pace too much. You're still going to be able to get in that run and gun situation that so many people love. Now that map size also creates that aesthetic and that feel of fast pace, and therefore it limits the weapon choice of players too if the maps are too small, like with what we saw in the beta. So therefore, that perception of SMGs being so dominant, that's because most of them actually probably were still in their sweet spots for SMGs. Now, of course, granted, if you have that long cross map with an SMG beating out a sniper, that's not necessarily something in which those SMGs should thrive. But outliers aside, weapon balance, though it was something that of course I still definitely think there needs to be some adjustments made, we as players may not have had the most accurate representation of that. So I'm really hoping more so just going forward that I think that these weapons should be tailored a little bit so that all playstyles are encompassed within every single map. And while we haven't seen the majority of them, so long as the overall experience is a little bit more balanced and not necessarily reliant on just one or two classifications of weapons, I think that'll be the nice way to go. Now, the final thing I want to talk about here today in this video deals with something that isn't necessarily in-game mechanics-wise or anything that, from a developmental standpoint, can really be adjusted. That deals with player retention. And this is something that is really interesting and something that maybe we'd be able to discuss at a later point in time, a couple of years back. But it's something that at the forefront is a point of discussion which I want to bring up simply because of this past year. I'm not saying this in a sense to rag on any titles, but more so to just solidify the amount of players that had content coming out to them in the past year. Whereas this point could totally be in the way of something similar to Infinite Warfare, where I could say I hope it doesn't die off the player base in the first couple of months. I don't really want to go in that direction here with this. I'm more so thinking about it in the perspective of that we had 3 active titles last year: Black Ops 3 Year 2, Infinite Warfare, and Modern Warfare Remastered, all giving us content within that singular year. And as a fan, as a consumer, as a player, there was really no time in which there was a super dry period throughout that year. Previously, in other years, we'd have stretches of time, say a couple of months maybe even at a time, in which between DLC, we didn't have anything dropped to us as players, so therefore we'd be playing the same old game, grinding it out over and over and over again, and for what? But with this past year, we had in 3 games DLC drops, granted in the way of supply drop content, but we did have updates that kept the game fresh. We had players going for stuff that they otherwise would not be going for, and while Black Ops 3 system might not have been the best, Modern Warfare Remastered and Infinite Warfare's gave a little bit more of a reason to play because you had a better chance of actually getting these things that were new. So while I do think that supply drop content DLC will be coming throughout World War II, I just hope that maybe through this supply drop content and hopefully other things as well too, because supply drop content is not going to cut it to fill up the gap in the calendar space, maybe like seasonal events and everything like that. I'm just hoping that Sledgehammer can take advantage of what they have in front of them, a nice player base and a nice experience that hopefully should bring the masses back to the franchise. Hopefully they have the ability to manage that sort of hype that lasted through an entire year and transfer it from 3 games to 1 in that calendar coming up. While that is a tall task, I think it is possible. I think with all the many things that are in the game, such as in the headquarters and all that, I think there's definitely a lot that will keep fans intrigued and interested and coming back for more. But until we get to that point in time, we have no idea other than just to be able to guess. So it is something that could or could not happen, and rich retention does stay high compared to this past year and other years previously. But nonetheless, those are some of the key concerns that I have here within Call of Duty World War II for this year. Once again, I am a huge optimist for pretty much everything in life. So some of these things are, of course, very general. I probably didn't cover as much as I had initially gone into this video hoping I had, or maybe that you guys even had hoped that I would as well too. But of course, that's where the discussion turns over to you guys. That's where we can make this a community-wide thing and we can express our concerns together, in which feel free to let me know down there in the comment section down below what you guys may think are your concerns for the game this year. Let me know down there in the comment section down below, positive, negative, whatever it may be, feel free to let me know. But hopefully you guys enjoyed, and if you guys did, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a beat with anything here regarding Call of Duty World War II. We're so close to just 1 week away now, and we're still gonna be killing it with the content here coming out, going up into the launch, and of course, therefore following after. So if any of it interests you, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. And finally, if you guys wanna follow me over on Twitter, that's the best place to get connected when you're outside of YouTube. I practically live on Twitter, so if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, link is down there in the description below. But all that said and out of the way, hope you guys had a fantastic day. Thanks so much for watching. Mine's been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care, and peace.